Well, good morning everyone from a very sunny day in London. In this video, we'll be talking about the Q343. Specifically, what is this camera like to use? I've had it for just over a month. I've been using it extensively. There was an original video a month ago from day 0, but now that I've had quite a lot of time with it, I've taken some of my favorite photos with it and I've taken it on a dedicated trip, I can give you a bit more of an in-depth look into this Leica. A few disclaimers which are important. I have no affiliation with Leica. I've paid for this camera with my own money and I paid full retail price for it. Another disclaimer, and this one might rattle a few Leica enthusiasts. I don't care about the history or the heritage or the brand. All I care about is, does this camera do the job and is it actually good to use? If you start clouding your judgment with history and heritage and brand image and all of these things, you can start giving this camera slack in areas where you probably shouldn't. Just because it's a Leica, it doesn't mean it's anything special. It should still do the job that it says on the paper it should do. As for me, if you're new here, I mainly shoot nice postcard picture scenes, a bit of street photography, and now and again a bit of landscape, but that's quite rare. So whenever I talk about this camera, I'm coming from that particular viewpoint. Let's start with build quality. I can only talk about what this camera is like when it's new. No surprises, the build quality is fantastic. It's easily one of the best build cameras I've used. When I first picked it up, the camera is quite light, so I assumed the build quality wouldn't be very good, but it is. Another thing that I like about it is it's actually rated for weather sealing. I shoot a lot in the rain, and with this I feel a bit more confident taking it out compared to something that hasn't got an official rating, even though it has got all the seals. The only thing I would criticize it on is that there are the 2 function buttons, and one of them feels a little bit numb compared to the other. I suspect they've done it in order to have a bit of physical separation if you're not looking, but I just wish both had a very tactile click like one of them does and the other one doesn't. Moving on to handling and ergonomics, and I can already see people saying, you're using the camera with one hand, that's the wrong way to use the camera. Of course, I don't use the camera one-handed when I'm actually doing photography, but when I'm filming these POV videos, I have to use my other hand to film. Also, when you're walking around the city, you might want to grab a coffee or a pint or a drink and hold it with the other hand. So even though I understand where you're coming from, that this is a two-handed experience, I still think you should be able to at least manage one-handed. Overall, this camera's fine. It's definitely not as pocketable as an X100, for instance, but this is not a camera that you buy to keep in your pocket. The body, there aren't any grips. There's a small recess at the back of the camera, and some people have said I should try to get used to that recess. I've tried. It's impossible. So for me, for my hands and for how I hold the camera, I need to have the optional thumb grip. I do wish I had a joystick. However, now that I've used the camera for a bit longer, I can see why they didn't put one in, because there's nowhere to physically put it. As for the buttons, they all click very nice. I think it's just enough amount of buttons. I probably wouldn't want any more custom buttons. It's definitely not as comfortable as a Sony a7R5. It's not even in the same league in terms of comfort. If I had to use a camera for an entire day and hold it, I will pick the Sony. I wouldn't pick this. This, I feel like I have to squeeze it. Generally, that's it. The screen comes out very well, does the job. So, yeah, not bad. One thing I've heard quite a few times before buying this camera is that you effectively buy the lens and you get a free body with it, and this applies to both the 43 and the 28. I didn't really know what that meant until I picked this up, and I can kind of see that. This is definitely one of the best lenses I've used in terms of autofocus elements, sharpness, and the general look. In terms of the focusing, you've got a focus tab with a little button that takes it in and out of autofocus and into manual focus. The tab is not a problem. Some people have said that it's a bit too small, and I can see why. But when it's in manual focus, I wish it was a little bit looser, as in to turn the focus tab and focus. The tab here is designed for one finger, or it looks like it at least, and I find that with 1 or 2 fingers, it's just not loose enough, and you have to really kind of push the lens to focus. If you're using your whole kind of hand to focus and you properly grip it, there is no problem there. One thing that has happened a few times that's a bit annoying, the macro mode and the normal mode, I wish that had a little button or something to lock it, because I will pull the camera out the bag, I'll switch it on to quickly take a photo of something, and all of a sudden it says, please put the lens in the correct mode, because it's between macro and normal, so that's just another thing. Now let's talk about the monitor and the viewfinder, and they have definitely cheaped out on both. The viewfinder is pretty crap, if I'm honest with you. Yes, it's bright, yes, it's big, but the resolution is, you could see, it's a very low resolution viewfinder. And considering this camera, or Leicas, are designed to be viewfinder first cameras, it feels like a very cheap move to not put the best possible resolution viewfinder at this price point. In terms of the screen, again, it's a lower resolution system compared to many other cameras. It's fine, it looks good, but it's nothing to really shout about. Battery life, very good. I have not yet needed to insert a second battery. At most, from a day's shoot, especially in cold weather, I will have, I don't know, 30% left. Memory, there's only one UHS 2 SD card slot. I know some Leicas have a built-in SSD, I think the M11s do, maybe. I wish this had maybe something like that at this price point. In terms of ports, there's a nice little door there for all your ports. Charges quite quickly via USB-C as well. As far as the exterior goes, that's basically it. Now let's talk about menus, and they are fantastic. They're definitely some of the best menus that I've seen on the camera. Certainly if you're coming from like a Sony or even a Fujifilm, the menu system on this is very simple. It's very easy to navigate, and once you've set the camera up, you don't often go into the deep menus. You can very much get by with just the splash screen when you press the menu button once and the buttons themselves. But when you do go into the menus, everything is self-explanatory and it's very easy to understand. I also like that there are separate dedicated menu systems for photo and for video. That makes life much easier if you're always switching between the two. Now let me quickly talk about the video functionality, and it's very, very good. By no means is this a dedicated video camera. I don't think any videographer or video first person will buy a Leica Q3. What this is good for is if you're taking photos and you want a nice static clip of a beautiful scene, this camera is fantastic for that. It has all the main features that you would expect from a video camera. You've got a stabilized lens, you've got an L-log profile, and you can customize the image as well. The only thing I would say is that there is no way that I've yet figured out how to separate the controls from photo and video. So for example, if in photo you're an aperture priority at f2, when you go into video, you'll still be in aperture priority at f2, and the shutter speed will go into crazy numbers, which will make the footage look a little bit strange. In Fuji cameras, for instance, you can separate the physical controls from the photo and the video mode, and the video mode will rely on virtual controls, so you can change your aperture, your shutter speed via the screen, whereas on this you can't. And I feel like because it's a software implementation, it's a bit of a missed step in my opinion. Hopefully this is something that can be added. I am still getting my head around color grading the footage. I'll show you a few samples now. Don't assume that is like the best version of that footage, because I am not a pro colorist and I'm still learning, so keep that in mind. If you're finding this video useful and wish to support the channel, then one of the best ways to do so is to check out my little photography book. This book consists of everything I know about photography and everything I've learned over the last decade put into a concise and easy to understand format. Think of this as a photography course without the cost. It covers psychology, mistakes, lessons learned, lighting, composition, color, editing, workflow, and so much more. For more information, see the links in the description, and thank you for your support. Now let's touch on autofocus, and I'll be very blunt here and I'll say it's not that good. It's good enough for most scenarios. It's good enough for travels, for point and shoot, for postcard pictures, even for like street photography and some slightly faster moving things. Considering how much money this costs, the autofocus system feels pretty outdated. I certainly wouldn't trust this camera in a situation where I need good autofocus. If you leave it in a single point and just one little, let's say, crosshair or one small square, point and shoot, it's great. It's very precise and it works as it should. However, anytime there's movement involved and you put the camera into continuous autofocus, it's all over the place. If you're buying this camera and you're gonna plan to use autofocus quite a lot or most of the time, I would say only consider it if you're shooting still life. If you want to shoot movement, if you want to shoot action, sports, wildlife, or anything where there is movement, I can't recommend this camera because you will have a very frustrating experience. Moving into the image quality and the raw files, it's very good. Obviously, you're not going to get a bad image quality out of this. It's easily everything that you need out of a camera in terms of sharpness, in terms of dynamic range, resolution, it has it all. The RAW files, they have a specific look, I will say that. If you like the Leica look, if you like high contrast, punchy images, then you will love the RAW files. However, what I have found is that I always had to dial all of that back, because for me it was too contrasty, too sharp, and too kind of punchy. There are some color casts with some photos. It definitely seems to be more on the blue side, at least for me. Almost every photo I've had to warm it up when I'm editing, and sometimes even on the back of the screen I'm taking a photo and I'm like, this looks so cold. And it is a bit cool when you get it into Lightroom. Image quality is one of these weird things where it's hard to say something bad about image quality out of a camera that's come out in the last 5 years. So if I take a photo on this camera, I can guarantee you by the time you see that image, you wouldn't have a clue whether it's a Leica, a Fuji, or a Sony. You could still tell a difference between smartphones and cameras for the most part, but yeah. This, Fuji, Sony, Hasselblad, it really doesn't matter. Most people wouldn't have a clue which camera's taken which photo. Alright, now let's summarize the video. Do I recommend the camera? The short answer is no. It's physically impossible to recommend a camera that's so expensive and that doesn't offer anything unique or different to what you can get elsewhere. Of course, yes, you have super premium build quality, it's made in Germany, you have the heritage and the history if you're into that. But fundamentally, this camera doesn't do anything different than an equivalent Sony, Nikon, Canon, even Fuji to a degree as well. Yes, the image quality is fantastic, but you can get fantastic image quality out of many other brands as well, not just a Leica. If you like the Leica look, then of course this is a good buy for you because it saves you a lot of editing. But if you're like me and you're not really into the Leica look and you want to undo it and put your own edit onto it, is it worth the money? I don't know, I don't think so. Yeah, so it's very hard for me to, it's impossible for me to recommend it. But if I really had to recommend it to someone, if you're a very wealthy hobbyist and to use £6,000 is not really a make or break kind of sum of money, then you'll have a fantastic time with it. It's a great camera, you'll enjoy using it. It's great for your holidays, it's great for your family, kids, all that kind of stuff. Equally, if you're a working photographer and you have your Sony kit or your Canon kit for the week and you just want something for your personal projects that's a bit more hands-on, not as technically advanced, and a bit more fun, then this Leica is actually great if you have that kind of income. It's a bit like having a classic car for the weekend and something a bit more modern and capable during the week. Will I keep it? Well, certainly I will use it for the next 6 to 12 months because I really want to give the Leica brand a proper go and I want to try my best to like this camera. It's not that I don't like it, it's that at this moment in time I just don't see the value in it. But my opinions do change as time goes on. So when I make a recap video, maybe in 12 months' time, I will have a very different opinion. I might even tattoo Leica on my forehead and sell everything I own and just use Leicas. I don't know. Highly doubt it, but I'm just saying that my opinions can change. All right, I am freezing here and I need to get out because it's not getting any sunnier. I think it's getting foggier, if anything, and I don't have any gloves. If you've made it this far, thank you. If you have your own thoughts and opinions, please leave them down below. I understand that many people, especially those who are really into their Leicas, will disagree with me on many aspects, but that's fine. That's why there are many different brands. But yeah, let me know your thoughts below. If you agree or disagree or whatever, that's cool. And I'm going to go and get a coffee now and warm up. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.